Morning all. I got up too early today, so I thought I'd tire myself and go back to bed, but do so by video annotating what happened yesterday. Round 7 against a FIDE master called Alfred, Alfred. His ECF, by the way, was about the same as mine, so that gave me some hope, even though his FIDE rating's a lot higher and he's been over 2300. So actually I used the prepare function on chessbase 11, which was quite useful. I saw before the game he played the King's Engine and the Sicilian defence. I didn't really want to play against my favourite pet King's Engine defence, or for that matter actually play into a razor sharp Sicilian. So I ended up playing a system called the Barry attack, which I think was it's kind of used a lot by a British grandmaster called Mark Hebden, who's also in the current FIDE Open. And apparently Alfred's played Hebden before in the Barry attack. I didn't actually know that, unfortunately, and he's actually drawn with Mark Hebden in the Barry attack at some point in the past. So anyway, so the Barry attack, so instead of going into King's Engine territory, I've just played Knight C3, rather cheeky move, Knight C3. So if it's Bishop G7, then we have a sort of Pietz type position, which he might not be that comfortable with. So he stamps out E4 by playing D5. So the problem is I can get a grip on E5 here and play the dreaded Barry attack system. So it looks as though I'm going to play a dead boring London system with Bishop F4. But it's not, because look, there's no pawn on C3. The knight's on C3, putting pressure on D5 here. In the London system, there's a pawn on C3. So please excuse any similarity to the dreadfully boring London system. I wouldn't want to torture you with that. So E3 here, and now honestly, there's a bit of excitement coming up here because I play now Bishop E2 with a venomous idea. Basically the idea is Knight H4, H4, H5, and HG, open up the H file, maybe G4 as well, maybe castling queenside later, and basically a hack attack. He played Knight Bd7. He seems to know what he's doing actually. I asked him in post-mortem, why not C5 and Knight C6, but he seems to prefer the Knight on D7. So there's a specific reason for his setup for Knight being on D7. So Knight E5 and now C5. Okay, so it looks as though, do I really want to play H4 or even G4 when he's got things like Knight E5 and Knight D7? I thought I'd better stabilise the centre just in case, because there's also might be Knight E4 could be useful. And furthermore, there's Queen A5 on the cards, which might make Knight E4 even more effective. So I play Bishop F3, trying to stabilise the centre, putting more pressure on D5. He plays Queen A5, which seems perhaps a little bit of an artificial move, but the knight is a target on this diagonal. I don't really want to castle kingside because then I lose my Barry attack possibilities. If I play Queen D2, well, that seems sensible to break the pin. And if Knight E4, I'm attacking the Queen. So Queen D2 it was. But now he has to do something about D5 because I'm also threatening Knight D5. He protects it. Slight weakening of the dark squares. Barry attack, finally. H4. So what does he do? Well, I was hoping for H5. That will give me a little bit of a target. Slight weakening of the structure. Maybe I'll castle queenside, maybe I'll play G4 later. Did he go in for any of that? No, he didn't weaken himself at all. He just takes on E5 and now plays B5. And this annoyed me a little bit because now I suddenly felt, B4, and he's got possibilities, Bishop A6, he's got Knight E4. In our post-mortem though, it seems B4, Knight E2, Knight E4 wasn't so bad for white. Even if these two guys get exchanged off, I leave a pawn on E5. This bishop versus the knight is not so clear. Maybe I'll give you a quick example. So say h5. Let's not turn on engine too much. Knight e4 takes. There might be Aswetians like here actually with bishop g6. That's another complicated thing about this position. There might be well, let's assume this line. Let's assume takes and takes. I think we were having a look at this position, and here we thought it wasn't that clear because there's queen d6 basically, and if rook d8 now there's queen e7, so queen d8, and we carried on actually a bit in postmortem here. And this position, you see black's got some pawns on light squares, particularly this one, which could hem in that bishop, so it might not actually be that bad for white, this position. So maybe this is the position I should have gone for. Instead I went for some fantasy variation. So after seeing b5, I saw something quite amusing, which is probably not that sound, so I'm reminded of Savielly Tartakower's expression, quotation in chess. Chess is a fairy tale of 1001 blunders. So I was trying to visualize this dream position or a disaster scenario for black, based on some of the elements of this position. What kind of disaster scenario could there be? I did note that the dark squares are a bit weakened, and I thought, hold on, I've got a cheeky move here. I don't need to retreat this knight. There's a way of not retreating the knight. There's a way of losing the knight instead. Just by playing d takes c5, I can actually just sacrifice the knight for nebulous compensation instead. So he attacks it, and now I play queen b4, and the idea is unveiled that I'm putting more pressure. I've created a battery on f6, which he's going to have to defend with queen e8, and then I can carry on my barrier attack. So he takes the sacrifice. I play b4, which is the idea, chase the queen back to d8, and now carry on the barrier attack, h5. And here is really a fairy tale, because I had imagined in my analysis actually that knight takes h5 wasn't possible, because of rook takes h5 seemingly winning a piece. Technically though, put this through an engine and the evil things will say this is better for black. We're going to add a Qd6, an evil Qd6. Taking, I can't actually take rook takes h5, that would be a blunder. Best is actually bishop h5, where I'm still actually, maybe in the game. But rook h5 is a refutation, it seems, f6. Leaving this one and this one hanging. It gets complicated actually. Bishop d6, and now, or maybe not, just g takes, and I don't know. Bishop takes d5 because there's tactics now. f5. No, this is stuff I would have never have seen, but it's better for black apparently. Okay, so going back to that, I had this idea that knight h5 wasn't playable, but for the wrong reason. Maybe I would have seen that. I don't know if he had actually played that, and I would have played bishop h5, maybe. But he played knight e8. So I'm playing a piece for a pawn down, but I suspected these pawns might be useful, and I thought I was going to continue the attack. But this second idea that I was going to continue the attack is unfortunately extinguished fairly soon. After bishop takes g7, knight takes g7. Unfortunately for me, after hg he plays not hg, standard recapture the centre, but capturing away from the centre, fg, which now means queen f6. And unfortunately, queen f6, if I take care, is also skewing down this diagonal. Oh dear. So basically the queens, unfortunately, after queen c3 are coming off. Queen f6, he's forcing the queens off. It's a knight for 2 pawns. But they look potentially quite dangerous, these pawns, but it doesn't seem that convincing for white at the moment. I thought I was losing, basically. Queen takes f6, rook takes f6. So a4 anyway. To answer bishop a6 is with b5, trying to stop a light square blockade. Rook b8, and now c3 supporting the pawn mass. So I've got this pawn mass, and there are some thoughts of the value of connected passed pawns. Why do we value connected passed pawns rather than, say, just single passed pawns? They have greater potential often to queen. That's the basic thing, which I should have, maybe even at this point started to philosophize about this potential, what I'm going to do with it later, what tactics could crop up later, because maybe I think it might have anticipated some later events soon to occur. In fact, I invite you to create some thinking about passed pawns, keeping them connected. Is it worth a knight? Say he could sacrifice a knight to get rid of two of them. That would leave isolated pawns, wouldn't it? If he could sack his knight on c5, then the connectedness would go. The power is in the connections, the network of pawns working together, herding themselves together to queen. Just bear that in mind. So the knight's doing something evil now. It goes to f5. So I connect my rooks now with king e2. So that means that both rook d1, rook b1 might be on the cards. But any rook move, there might be knight h4. By the way, I couldn't have evicted the knight because he's got a tactical knight h4 here anyway, I think. Which might be a good move, hitting f3. I didn't want to just be a bishop down, I'd rather be a knight down. Because knights, you can take away key squares, but bishops are sometimes trickier. Maybe in this position, no. I could say a better blockade, but I'm not sure. But anyway, king e2, knight e7. So where is this evil knight going? I played b5, and he plays, I wasn't that worried about e5 because I thought I had e4 here, so I played e4. He sports bishop e6, and all of a sudden I'm a bit optimistic. I just played rook hd1. What is he doing? Is he going to let me infiltrate down the d file? Is he playing for some sort of bishop c4 check when I just played king e1? Not king e3 because I thought knight f5 check. So he takes, and he doesn't play bishop c4 check here. I wonder what an engine thinks of the position now. I think it's become very unclear all of a sudden. Minus 0.38. So with check, I don't think that helps black's cause that much. In fact, king e3 and king e1 are both mentioned now. King e1 might even actually be inferior apparently. So knight f5 check, was that a problem? Just take rook d7. You see, I've got the passed pawns now. It's starting to be about equal. Engines are changing its tune. So I say engines, by the way, because probably most engines run the same, mostly the same criteria, for calculation. So rook f4, and I see that he's gonna force some further exchanges, but I'm gonna cut this knight out of key squares. If I just protect and allow an exchange sack, I'm going to end up with a king on e3 and a pawn preventing knight access to d5 and f5. So I thought no big deal. And by this time, we've still got to get to move 40 for his extra time bonus, and he's running short of time actually, because he's been using lots and lots of time to try and find a way of knocking out these passed pawns. So he's actually in time trouble already. And that's something I noted, because the nature of someone in time trouble, if they've used half an hour on a move, they're in time trouble. What they want is moves which they don't feel bad playing, such as forcing moves, easy moves to play. And so maybe you've got the element of trying to play your best moves, but maybe also trying to mix in maintaining the tension of the position. Because if you maintain the tension, then that's a lot more calculation effort, and sometimes a lot trickier for them to play in quieter positions rather than positions they've got a forcing line. But here he's using up his forcing line at the expense of cutting out the knight, and I suspect this is a blunder, because I think the evaluation is better for black here. But after rook takes e4, though it's forcing, all of a sudden now I've got the advantage. So he's in time pressure, he's just blundered. It's handing me the advantage on the plate. I'm locking out the knight out of key squares. My rook is going to infiltrate down the d file after it gets replaced by the rook on d1. It's better for white now. It looks terrible for black, and I was very optimistic of winning this game from here. But I find a way not to win very shortly. In fact, after rook c8, it's a very, very critical position, and I had more time than the opponent for sure, maybe about 25 minutes, and the opponent only about 5 minutes, and it's a 30-second increment per move. I play at first a non-committal move. A committal move, as I say, with forcing stuff for the opponent. c6 would allow knight c6, and if he wants, to get rid of that knight, he'd be getting rid of all of my connected passed pawns, leaving, isolated pawns. But I've played rook d7, and I was hoping for king f7. I thought that was worse than king f8. He played king f8, and here is it. What do you do here? Some casual observations is not just on counting pawns, but counting passed pawns. How many passed pawns are there? At the moment, there's potential for 3 passed pawns here if this is knocked out. And this is a reserve pawn, so even if this gets knocked out, there's still 3 passed pawns. So from the perspective of maintaining the tension, really the next move was a blunder, just from the perspective of not giving the opponent anything too forcing. It's an absolute howler, my next move on move 32. So I wonder if you can guess what I played here if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, I believed at the time, and I still believe it, but to a lesser extent, that it wasn't completely and utterly winning, that this next move just threw the game away, this position away. It's just allowing him to equalise. Just knight c6, problems solved. All the connected passed pawns gone. After a draw here, because I noticed to my horror, I thought this was going to be promising for me. Say rook takes. I'm trying to explain what happened, but I'm not actually 100% sure what I calculated now. It's the benefit of doing live commentary. It's a good audit trail of what I was actually thinking. But I think I noticed actually that I think I noticed that rook takes c6, king d3 doesn't work, because he's got rook a6 protecting that pawn and attacking this one. So given that there's actually in this position and also in this position the same super cunning idea, a logical idea, because there's a reserve pawn here, this c3 pawn. So if this goes, it's actually sometimes no big deal, because if the objective is 3 passed pawns, the objective can still be achieved with this one instead of that one. This is like a backup pawn for that one. So bearing that in mind, and the importance of trying to keep the pawns connected, there's 2 moves here which keeps them connected, and the potential for 3 passed pawns, which is an extremely attractive proposition, of course. So the move which we thought in post-mortem was totally winning for a while, well, until I looked at it myself more detail with an engine last night, was actually, I wonder if you can spot it, a potentially much better move than c6. If I give you 10 seconds again from this position, so a different perspective, this time trying to find what you think is the best move, starting from now. Okay, so I've given you, I think I've given you enough clues for why I would think it was the best move. Rook takes a7, because it doesn't matter about losing c5. So say rook takes c5, there's a move here just to protect the c3 pawn. Okay, so just king d3, and okay, black is a knight up, but we concluded that black was totally lost in the post-mortem because c4 is going to happen. We have this picture painted of 3 connected passed pawns. It turns out, and this is why maybe it's good to do computer post-mortem, that you can imagine the opponent's going to play like a computer. They won't do. But there's actually a computer resource idea here in this position, which means it's not the +5 that I imagined the engine would think. There's a computer resource which might save this position in the form of knight c8. The knight can be destructive. Now, my opponent said something very interesting in the post-mortem here about he says it doesn't matter if he's given an extra move, it doesn't matter whose turn it is. And I suddenly thought about turn independence, and Bronstein writing about how dangerous it is for someone to have the advantage of being their turn. And I had this philosophical discussion with my good friend Alex on the train back, saying, there's the deeper threat to consider of the free connected passed pawns here. Why blow the deeper threat for anything forcing? And I really truly regretted c6 for about 2 hours subsequently after the post-mortem, because this surely is a dream position. It sort of creates this turn independence. You just painted the picture of 3 passed pawns. How can black possibly salvage that position? Well, the thing is, knight c8 offers h7. This is engine analysis. I'm not really sure he would have played knight c8 because it involves sacking h7. But now you see knight b6, and this involves sacking the knight now, because if a5, just sack the knight, and this rook and pawn ending is better for me, but I'm not completely sure it's totally winning as before. The passed pawns have gone. There's only one passed pawn here, but the king's cut off, so maybe there is good winning chances. So this is definitely better than the game continuation as well. A better rook and pawn ending to head for. But would he have played, this knight c8? That's the big question. Probably not. So that's I know. I've managed to potentially blow one position after all that drama of this game. Well, not much drama, but also after c6. The engine after knight takes c6 doesn't even favour the automatic recapture. There's king d3 here. King d3 in this position again paints this picture of the 3 passed pawns. If rook d8, then there's b takes. So if the knight's forced to move, again, this is problematic for black. If the knight moves, and it hasn't got that many squares, so say moving it to a5, okay, say rook takes a7, can the knight really be that annoying here against these passed pawns? It's hard to believe the knight can be that annoying. It can be sort of dislodged, and b6 and the pawns would seem to be crashing through against someone who blunders in particular. So rook a8, a5, it's looking as though this should be dangerous, but I don't know. It's only about 1, you see. I expected, well, that's the pain relief aspect. I thought it was a total like +5 or something, this position, not playing. I thought c6 was an absolute howler basically. Rook takes s7 gives the best practical chance to try and win this position. I really don't know what happened, but to put this game in context, in my defence, okay, because I've got no defence about not having too much time. That's not a defence, but the previous evening, after the FIDE game yesterday, on the previous evening, I was called in to play because Muswell Hill were a player short. Myself and Alex actually went through the pouring rain after our FIDE game to try and get to this Imperial College match, and I managed to swindle this 185 ECF player, which I'll try and do a video of soon. But the culmination of that was I got back the previous evening at about 12. I was too kind of hung up on chess, so I was not able to sleep much. I got up about 6 or 7, so I had hardly much sleep. I couldn't even get back to sleep. So before this game against Alfred, I really didn't have much sleep. and I got up far too early. But even so, you know, if you've got like 20 to 30 minutes and the opponent's only got 5, even though it's 30-second increments, I think it's bad to start blitzing the opponent, expecting them not to play the best moves. So yeah, I regret completely playing c6 here. I should have seen many of these possibilities, and possibly earlier in the game try and kind of philosophically anticipate the importance of connected passed pawns and keeping them together and intact. And this kind of scenario with the knight, you know, knocking them out, if the opponent's going to do that, let them resourcefully do that, and don't just offer it on a plate with c6. So I offered it on a plate with c6, and you know, and that's it. You know, I don't think I've got anything here. In fact, this ending's, I did offer a draw, and I was happy he accepted because it was a FIDE master 2290 whatever. He's been higher than 20. That's why he's a FIDE master, to be over 2300. But here, okay, there's a small advantage to white even here because the king's cut off. But it's trickier now. I'm not sure how much worth it's playing on there, but you know, he was just happy to accept the draw because he realised, of course, his king was cut off. So it was a dramatic game. Objectively, I was completely lost. It was just an unsound knight sacrifice for 1 pawn, which became 2 pawns. But yeah, I think it was an interesting game nevertheless. I thought it was going to be fun, this d takes c5. My opponent next door to me did have a look at the post-mortem as well. He was fascinated to see what happened, and someone that lost on my right had stayed behind after his loss to carry on watching this game. So both my fellow bunnies on the left and right, who were against IMs or something, were intrigued by this game. So Queen d4 takes b4. Yeah, it's a bit of a crazy idea. I know it's a crazy idea, but it looked, for some reason, it looked promising to me to carry on the attack, push, you know, the queen back. We could explore this bishop h5 thing, just briefly here. Actually, I don't like to do more analysis in the summary, but apparently this, you know, say he did take here, and then sorry, that's winning bishop g7. He has to play f6. You see, this might have offered some of the compensation I was dreaming about anyway, where I could castle queenside. The problem is there a problem here? Rook h5. Can I eventually castle queenside? That was the dream. It seems to be asking at e5, but there's queen d5. It just didn't seem to materialise anyway, and it probably doesn't materialise there with best play either. There's probably not enough time. But here, you know, I thought this was promising, this h5. I thought this concept was very interesting. I don't know what you guys think, if it was a rubbish concept here. But, you know, it wasn't so easy to kind of refute over the board, even though he got the queens off, which seemed to be a logical thing, and he played for what seemed to be a next logical step, which was to liberate the bishop and use his central pawn mass. And if I play g3, I'm getting stuffed because of e4 and bishop g4 check, so I'm forced to play e4. But now, you know, after this d5, you know, it's rebounding a bit on the d file. Now he's going in for this forcing sequence, which just hands me this very dangerous position, where in effect I'm forcing a draw with c6. But if I want to play for a win, rook d7. But it requires seeing, you know, the quiet move, king d3, this rook d7. If I play, rook takes a7 requires king d3. I think this is another thing. I may have not been considering too much king d3 here, which I should have been, because this is only a spare pawn on the c file. So king d3 needs to be considered. after rook takes c5. I think I might have erroneously been miscalculating with b6, and I think b6 might offer black some chance. In fact, black would be better. Check, gets behind the pawn I expect, rook b3, and now plays knight c6, and the evil knight is actually working with the rook, and black's better here probably. Rook a6, knight b8, and if rook a8, rook b7. If rook a7, my rook's in front of the pawn. This is not what you want when you're a knight down. That's a disaster scenario for those passed pawns. But so it requires, this whole thing requires seeing king d3 here, and the anticipation of this variation earlier in the game may have been made possible with a bit of, you know, philosophizing about these connected passed pawns and what could happen to them. But king d3 here keeps white's winning chances alive. Black can very easily go wrong. So say king e8, b6, b7. This is starting to be absolutely critical. The evil knight tries to do something, but now black is actually overloaded. If he has to sack his knight here, this is a bit bad. Well, we reach an ending where it's like still less than a pawn. Oh, blimey. Anyway, so who knows? Maybe something like this would have happened, and so there is no need for such huge regret. Recently, there's been this big controversy in the Anand Naka game about this +5, and I'm gutted about this +1 here possibility in effect. So I don't know, how do we use engines? If you're an over the board player, they can offer a bit of pain relief because you may have got your post-mortem with the opponent wrong. There's resources in there which both of you may have missed, everyone else might have missed who was at the post-mortem, and so you might feel relieved that you didn't blow such an easy win if the opponent was, in theory, able to play like the engine was. But comments or questions on YouTube? Thanks very much.